Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is day 230, Monday, October the 23rd, 2017. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, going to cover some of the news that broke over the weekend. A lot of political news this weekend, so we'll just go ahead and tick them off. Okay, first of all, I thought one of the most important things I saw over the weekend was the interview that was done on Fox News with Representative Ron DeSantis, who's actually a very good man. And what was extraordinary about this particular thing, he was talking a lot about the various investigations going on and was talking about the Uranium One scandal. And he said that the House leadership had blocked the efforts of several Republicans, including himself, when they tried to hold hearings and investigate the Clinton uranium deal. And this is pretty remarkable because I don't remember any of that going on. I remember when the Schweitzer's book came out and a lot of people were talking about it. I don't remember so much going on when the deal was being done because it went on over a period of months and there was a lot of things going on at the time. Certainly wasn't as big a story as it is now. Even after Schweitzer's book came out, it was kind of big for a while, but it kind of died down. But apparently, back when this whole deal was going down, DeSantis and some other Republicans were wanting to look into this, and apparently it was Paul Ryan and his whip and a couple other people in the Republican leadership that put the kibosh on it and wouldn't allow them to hold these hearings to look into it. And I thought that was an interesting revelation for him to make on Fox News on Sunday, based on where we are now. It'll be interesting to see how Paul Ryan responds because I'm sure he'll be asked about that, and to see if whether or not the Republican leadership in the House, probably in the Senate as well, was attempting to squash any type of investigation into this. Because a lot of times when you have these types of scandals, they're not just limited to one party. A lot of times these things, if you're going to do something like this, a lot of time you have to also corrupt the leadership of the two houses, and in this case, the leadership was Republicans. So it wouldn't surprise me. It wouldn't surprise me at all to find out that the leadership, both the House and the Senate, were bought off, or threatened, or bribed, or what have you, in some way, to back off this investigation into the Clinton Uranium One deal. Also, he said that he has spoken to this inside man, this guy that's been deemed the confidential witness number one, who was the inside guy on this particular operation for the FBI, and he has confirmed to Ron DeSantis that he is under a gag order and that he was threatened by Attorney General Lynch when he attempted to come forward in 2015. And once, like I said before, and like you're hearing other people say, Attorney General Sessions needs to act immediately. I don't know why he's waiting, but he immediately needs to remove the gag order. He needs to allow this man to testify in front of Congress and tell us everything he knows. That's what needs to happen. And so we'll be watching Attorney General Sessions very, very closely in the next week or two, because at some point, very soon, he can't just sit back and not comment on this, not have an opinion on this, or blow this off, or say, no, I've recused myself, or whatever. This is not something he's going to be able to, sideline. He is going to have to come out and make a statement on this. He's going to have to come out and do something. And I don't know how he can come out, being as how he is a Republican, and he was a Republican senator, how he can come out and say, no, I'm not going to remove the gag order and allow this guy to come out and tell us what he knows. I just don't see how he can do that, how it can be politically viable. It's wolf to just watch and see. I mean, I don't know what's going on in Jeff Sessions' mind. Obviously, I can't figure it out. There's some reason why he's not willing to do anything. He's the lamest attorney general I've ever seen. I don't think he's necessarily, corrupt or evil or anything like that. I just think he just seems to be completely, not even inept, but just not interested in any of these crimes that are going on. He just doesn't seem to think it's all that important or something. It's just It's baffling, absolutely baffling. But he is going to have to come out and do something. I can't believe that he will come out and say, no, I think I'm going to leave that gag order in place or something. I mean, I just don't know. We're just going to have to watch Sessions. He's an oddball at this point. I just don't know what to make of him. But, you know, I support what a lot of other people say, which is fire Sessions, man. Just fire him. I know there'll be a political shitstorm, but I would weather the storm. Get rid of Sessions. I mean, he's completely ineffective. Absolutely ineffective. And if he does let this slide, he doesn't investigate this, if he doesn't remove the gag order, at that point, I think that there's going to be a lot of people calling for Sessions to resign or for Trump to fire him. I think there's going to be great pressure on Trump to fire him. Not great pressure if Trump, fires him, but if he doesn't fire him, there's going to be great pressure on him and the leadership in the House. They're going to have to come out and deal with this issue. This is not something they can let slide because more and more and more information is coming out all the time. So we'll just keep watching this story and keep watching the reaction of Sessions and the Republican leadership to see how they're going to play their hand here. But I mean, they have an election coming up in 2018. The campaign starts in the spring. There's a lot of primaries that are going to be going on, and you can bet that if Ryan and some of the others in leadership positions blow this off and don't get after this, that there's certainly it's going to be used against them in their primaries, and I think they know that. I mean, this is political, elections 101. You don't give your opponent in an upcoming election this type of ammunition to use against you, and this is too big of a story to just sit back and not be able to respond to it. So we'll just keep watching this, but wow, what a major bombshell really that is for him to come out and say that again because of the election coming up. Because now Mr. DeSantis has basically said, yeah, we tried to investigate this and we were blocked by our own party leadership. That's a very damaging piece of evidence, and I certainly would not want to be running in a re-election campaign and have my opponent have this type of information to use against me. Because everyone's paying attention to this story. Republicans certainly are. Well, about a week ago, I mentioned to you that there was a Czechoslovakian businessman who's being called the Czech Trump. Well, the election was this past Saturday, and he won in a landslide. Was not even close. He and his party won in a landslide. He is now the new president of the Czech Republic. He is anti-establishment, pro-business, anti-EU. He's definitely anti-EU immigration policy. And just more troubles for the EU technocrats, because remember, it was just a week before that we saw Austria elect a new chancellor who's being called the Austria's Trump. So now we're seeing these Trump-like characters, these businessmen or people who are very much like a Trump. They're very nationalist, they're anti-EU, they're anti-immigration, all this type of stuff. These sort of Trump clones that you're now seeing popping up in Europe and winning elections and winning big. The guy who won in Austria won big, and now this man, Andres Babis, won big in Saturday's elections in the Czech Republic. So we'll see what kind of a job he does. Now, he has actually been in government before. I think not elected. I think he was an appointed official, and he was had something to do with the Treasury or something like that, something to do with the economics of policy or something like that. But anyway, he won big, and he's worth about $4 billion. He's the second wealthiest man in the Czech Republic. So that's very interesting to see, and you can see that Trump's success here is definitely being noticed by Europeans and people around the world, and there are a lot of individuals out there who are looking at the path that Trump took, and they're following in his footsteps, and they're clearly showing that they're having success as well. And it tells you a lot about the state of the world, not just here in the United States, but the state of the world and the direction it is moving. And I think it's moving in the right direction. Of course, we all face a globalist, deep state international crime syndicate, which still has a lot of power. So it's a battle of the titans, and we're living through it, my friends. We're living through history. Here's a good question. What was the real purpose of Rosenstein appointing Mueller? We were told that the purpose of Rosenstein appointing Mueller was to find out if there was Trump-Russia collusion, to find out about Russia's involvement in our elections, their meddling, but also to look into also the reasons why Trump may have fired Comey and various other things. But it's because we are now learning so much about the Uranium One scandal and all the people who were involved in that, including Mueller, who was the FBI director at that time, Rosenstein, McCabe, Lynch, and of course the rotten Reverend Clinton. So when you take that into context and then you ask the question, what is the real purpose of Rosenstein appointing Mueller and what's Mueller's real objective? It appears that his real objective is to destroy the evidence of the rotten Reverend Clinton and the Obama administration's criminal activities, including his own, and Mr. Rosenstein, and Mr. McCabe, and all the rest. Was Mueller put in there? Because let's face it, he hasn't found anything on Trump-Russia collusion. And now the only real collusion that we're finding about, or meddling that we're really seeing with the Russians, is in the Uranium One deal. And the bribery, the extortion, the kickbacks, the money laundering, and all the other things that went on, of which all of these people were aware. So what is Mueller? What is his real objective? And it's becoming more and more obvious that his objective is to distract from the real Russian issue and to destroy evidence of the criminal activity of the Obama administration and the rotten Reverend Clinton during her tenure as Secretary of State. That's what it's looking like to me more and more every day. We'll keep following the story. It's got legs. Well, the rotten Reverend Clinton continues to trash the American president on foreign soil. Over the weekend, she was talking to a BBC host, and that she stated that after Trump's inaugural speech, that George W. Bush said, quote, "That was some weird shit," unquote. Really, W. W was probably the dumbest president, certainly in my lifetime, maybe in the history of America. That was a dumb man. Let's face it. If you've never looked into the life of George W. Bush, take a look. The man was a total loser. If he wasn't born into the wealthy Bush family, he'd probably be a bum. Failed at everything he did. I think he's the only guy who ever owned a baseball team that actually lost money. The only guy, in fact, not just baseball, but any sports franchise. He's the only person I'm aware of who bought a Major League sports franchise and sold it for less than what he paid for it. I don't think it's ever happened before. But that's how badly George W. Bush degraded the Texas Rangers when he was the owner of the Rangers. And that was, of course, bought for him by the Saudis. The Saudis bought him 2 oil companies. He ran them into the ground. He's a total dumbass and a total failure. And as far as, that was some weird shit. No, W, let me tell you what some weird shit was. How about the weird shit of going into Iraq based on a bunch of lies? Going in to find weapons of mass destruction which did not exist. And then creating a massive clusterfuck in the country which left a massive void, which was then filled by ISIS. That's right, George W. Bush is the godfather of ISIS. He created them essentially. Let's look at what he did in his reaction to 9/11. World Trade Center Building 7. He didn't see any problem with that. And let's not forget that little episode in the classroom, which was brought up by one of my subscribers on a previous comment. He was speaking to a classroom of children after 9/11, and he told them that he watched the first plane hit the tower, and then he said, yeah, I thought, boy, that's just one bad pilot. No reasonable person I know of, and I was sitting there watching on a TV when the plane hit the first building along with a whole bunch of other people in a cafeteria. Nobody looked over and said, well, that's just a bad pilot. Nobody in their right mind would make a comment like that. Everybody that I was looking at that time was going, shit. Did you see? Look at the TV. No one was going, well, that guy must be a bad pilot. That shows you what a moron he is. But let's get to the more important part of that comment. First of all, to say that he was describing the fact that he was taken out into a hallway where there was a TV and he watched the first plane hit the first World Trade Center building. He was lying. And we know he was lying because there was no video footage of the first plane hitting the first tower on September 11th. Didn't exist. We did not get that video until 2 days after, September 13th, when a Canadian film crew who had been filming a segment down in the streets of New York City, when the cameraman heard the plane flying over very low, he turned his camera, looked up, and he followed the plane as it crashed into the building. Then that evening, September 11th in the evening, when they went back to their hotel and he realized that he had captured that and he didn't see any other news organizations showing the first plane hitting a tower, only the second, because no cameras were trained on the first tower expecting a plane to hit it. So he sent the footage back to his producers in Canada, and then they received it on the 12th, and then on the morning of the 13th, they had the video edited, and they contacted a half a dozen or so American media organizations and said, hey, we noticed no one seems to have any images of the first plane hitting the tower. Well, we've actually got some video footage of that from our cameraman who was filming down in New York on September 11th that morning. Would you like us to send it to you? And they all said, oh yeah, send it. And that was the first time we saw the first plane hitting the tower, September 13th. So George W. Bush telling that classroom full of kids that he saw the first plane hitting the tower on the morning of September 11th, hitting the first tower, was a lie. George W. Bush added $5 trillion to the debt, bailed out the criminal bankers for $900 billion, God knows how much more than that, destroyed the economy. Remember his little episode where he came out on the aircraft carrier, got out of the plane, and did the victory speech, mission accomplished, and then 2 weeks later, the massive slaughter and the Civil War began? The war hadn't even hardly started, and he was declaring it was over. Probably the worst president of my lifetime. I view Bush as being worse than Obama, and he was bad. Worse than Clinton, and he was bad. George W. Bush. Ain't that some weird shit? Right. What a scumbag. For 8 solid years, that son of a bitch, you never heard him come out and say a single word about Obama and his destruction and obstruction and crimes that we're now learning about. But he has no problem coming out and trashing Trump. You just hate these people. You just literally, you hate to hate people, but you just can't help but hate guys like that. I just hate the Bushes. Fascists. Oh, let's move on. Well, Mad Maxine Waters tells the crowd that she will go and take out Trump. Right. Well, Maxine Waters, as I've mentioned in previous videos, there's a young Latino guy out there running against her, and he's primarying her. And I honestly believe that this guy's going to beat her. Now, he's going to challenge her to a debate, and I'm telling you, if Mad Maxine Waters ends up in a debate with this young Latino guy, now he's a liberal Democrat, but he's very well spoken, seems very well educated. I watched a little bit of video on him. He didn't say one single word about destroying Trump or anything else. He kind of talked about what they need to do to rebuild his community and blah, 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 because she's a congressman and he's wanting to be congressman of one of the most impoverished districts in the damn country. Okay, it's not a very wealthy district at all, and he's making the assertion that she hasn't done anything for the damn community. If she gets into a debate with this guy, he will destroy her, because I heard him talk about the issues, and he has a decent grasp, a decent command of the issues. Maxine Waters cannot debate any issues. She's completely a numbskull. She's completely nuts. She's dense. She's a moron. If she gets into a debate with this guy, she will lose that seat in Congress. Now, her advisors will tell her, no, don't debate this guy. He's good looking, he's young, he's Latino, he's smart, he's got a good control of the issues. Don't debate him. But if you don't debate somebody, a lot of times, that can hurt you very much too, because then they can go out and say, yeah, see, she won't debate me. She won't even go on the stage with me. So, Maxine Waters is going to have her own problems. Do not be the least bit surprised to see her get knocked out of that seat that she now holds and will be rid of Mad Maxine. And she's up to her eyeballs in her own criminal activities as well. We now have photos. We, of course, had learned that Bill Clinton had met with Vladimir Putin at Putin's home in Russia before the Uranium One deal. And after he was bribed. Of course, now we've got some really good pictures of that. Because apparently Putin invited the media. And so the media followed them around with cameras while Putin was showing Clinton around his home, which is quite the nice home, I might add. It's quite the sprawling mansion, you might say. Tennis courts, swimming pool, surrounded by forests and stuff, and it's a huge house, too. Mr. Putin's doing quite well, but now we have photos of the Rotten Reverend's pervert husband meeting with Vladdy before the Uranium One deal and after he was bribed. My. Speaking of the Rotten Reverend, she made $48 million off Bill's speeches while she was Secretary of State. Yes, he's out giving speeches, splitting half the cut with Hillary, and she's delivering on policy from her position as Secretary of State. That is extreme corruption, pay to play, and worse. It's called treason. The Rotten Reverend and her husband, along with a lot of their friends, need to be in jail. And something tells me it's possible they may end up there. This Uranium One scandal has got legs. Now, when the Rotten Reverend was asked about the Uranium One scandal, which has the Rotten Reverend up to her neck in bribery, kickbacks, and extortion, the Rotten Reverend responded that it's just a diversion by the Trump administration. Yes, it's all a diversion by the Trump administration. All this was all done long before he was even thinking about running for president. This started back in 2009 and was over in 2015 before he even announced he was even running for president. And oh yeah, we have the newest revelations on this particular story, which is that the FBI had arrested 10 Russian spies in June of 2010 in regards to this investigation. And then the Secretary of State, the Rotten Reverend Clinton, quickly rushed them back to Moscow on the 4th of July weekend before the FBI was finished questioning them. Returning the spy ring. Keeping them from having to stand trial. Why? And why didn't the FBI say anything after she did it? This is another story that you'll be hearing about in the next couple of days that people will be following up on. Because this just continues to add to the evidence of the crimes of the Rotten Reverend, her husband, Slick Willie, and the Obama administration. I'm telling you, this stuff is not going away. And another thing, we had Trump this week basically come out and say, I guess some of you saw my video 2 days ago on the dossier because of what's going on now, new information on the dossier. And Trump tweeted out, hey, that the DOJ and the FBI need to tell us who paid for the dossier. You see, this is speaking to my point. For the longest time, we've all been thinking, who's this Democratic donor? And, trying to figure out these Democratic donors. But it's becoming more and more obvious as you watch how hard the deep state, the FBI, the DOJ, everyone is trying to cover this up and trying to protect BuzzFeed from having to reveal the source of GPS Fusion, having to reveal the source of who that donor was. It's becoming a lot more obvious that it's a lot more than just some Democratic donor that we may very well find. And this is what Trump is hinting at, that it may be the FBI themselves. It may have been the FBI that commissioned this dossier. And my oh my, if we learn that, oh boy. Well, Twitch McConnell is now thrilled to have Trump in the White House and says he doesn't get enough credit. What is going on here? Well, as you know, I've been covering this all the time in the past since Trump was inaugurated, how the Twitch McConnell has been doing everything he can to obstruct the Trump agenda. And as you know, there's been several attempts to vote him out of the leadership position. And this is something that we heard the Whisper campaign about 2 weeks ago, is that they were very close to having enough votes. Very close to having enough votes to vote Twitch McConnell out of his leadership position. He's finally learned of this. He knows it's very likely that the Republicans are going to pick up at least 5, maybe 7 or 8 Senate seats in 2018. And once they do, and they have that vote for who's going to be the Senate Majority Leader, it ain't going to be him. He doesn't want to lose his power, so now he's being heavily pressured. He's going to have to produce on tax reform and tax cuts. He's going to have to produce on Obamacare repeal. He's going to have to do those 2 things before Christmas, or he will get the no confidence vote, and his ass will be out of there. And he knows it. That's why he suddenly loves Trump. He got the message. Trump wins again. Piglosi, Nazi Piglosi, on MSNBC says that the GOP tax plan is Armageddon, and that she's waiting to see if Mueller finds collusion so that they can impeach Trump. Well, she's senile, of course. If you watch the interview, I can only watch about 3 minutes of it. The woman cannot even complete a cogent sentence. She cannot even give a sentence where there's a thought there that's cogent. It's her mind is, she's a scatterbrain. You can't follow anything she says. She's mentally ill. And I got news for Nazi Piglosi. There are going to be quite a few Democrats in those states that were blue that turned red who will be voting for this Armageddon tax plan. And once he gets his Armageddon tax plan and all those middle-class voters all across the Rust Belt and everywhere else in the country get those nice big fat tax cuts, a lot of them are going to go vote Republican. Piglosi and her friend Maxine Waters and this other nutcase, Frederica Wilson, who's my dumbass of the week, they are helping to destroy the Democratic Party. And so, as Trump said in his tweet earlier in the week, yeah, keep putting Maxine and this nutcase, which he calls her wacky Frederica Wilson, keep putting wacky Frederica Wilson on TV. Keep putting Pelosi on TV. Keep putting these people on TV. They're destroying the Democratic Party, and it's doing a great benefit to me and my administration and the Republican Party. So yes, Frederica Wilson, the asshat from Florida, is the dumbass of the week. She continues to make a fool of herself. She's absolutely sickening. Well, thank you so much for tuning in. That's TowerGate for Monday. Out of time. You guys have a good night. Goodbye.